Hey everybody, I'm Jack with Future Pastimes, and we're reading Dune, and we've just gotten to a really important, crazy chapter. And it starts off with Lady Jessica. She's just woken up, although they've slept through the day, so night is approaching. But she slept really hard, and she realizes that she allowed herself to sleep so soundly because she feels safe in Stilgar's presence with the troop. But that safety is pretty quickly shattered when, after she starts getting dressed, she hears that Stilgar is arguing with Jamis. And it's because Jamis is demanding the right to challenge Lady Jessica's role in the whole legend. And because of the rules of Fremen society, he's not going to be fighting Jessica. She has to have a champion. But because she is an Outworlder, her champion can't be a Fremen, and it has to be Paul, which is really the whole point. Jamis wants to fight Paul. He's still holding a grudge from having been knocked over by Paul and having his Mala pistol stolen, and by a 15-year-old boy. And so Jamis he's at his wit's end. He's been stewing the whole day, and he's ready for blood. So Stilgar is pissed because he has given them his countenance. He has assured them that they are safe in the tribe, but now he can't get around this because it is a Fremen thing, Amtal rule, which is a test to its destruction, or also known as the Tahadi challenge, which is basically a blood duel. And it's Jamis's right as a Fremen to do this. So Stilgar, before things get too far, Stilgar tries to push Jamis's buttons so that he'll call Stilgar out first. But Jamis, as pissed as he is at what Stilgar keeps saying and doing, he explains, "Don't test me, because I'm going to do this." And Jessica lets him know, she is using her Bene Gesserit insights, and she understands. She's basically imprinted him in a way that she knows she could control him. But she says, once this is done, you're going to face me, because I will call you out, and I'm going to make you feel pain like you would never know. And Jamis is like, it's witchcraft. She's trying to put a spell on me. And Stilgar says, you have to stop talking. You can't talk anymore. Otherwise, I can't control what's going to happen to you. And so Jessica has to bite her tongue and be silent. And Paul realizes he's going to have to fight this fight. So they strip down to just their loincloths. They get rid of their still suits, and they form little camps. And Chani is giving Paul some insight. So lets him know Jamis's fighting style, that he can fight with either hand, that he has a habit of moving in a certain way. And she gives him a crysknife so that he has something to fight with. And it's an unfamiliar blade for Paul. He's testing the weight and the balance. He's not sure if it can break. And then Jamis says, "May thy knife chip and shatter." And Paul is like, okay, so it can break. And as he's steeling himself, he's remembering all of his lessons, and he's really trying to focus. But he's also a little bit distracted by the fact that he has had all of these prescient visions that have ended with him dead from a knife wound. And not all of them, but enough that it's alarming. And but he's conscious that he is in the present now, and all of his visions get fuzzy. So he's really not sure how this is going to go up. But one thing that he does realize is that in certain things that he is remembering from a vision, so it's like future memory, things are not exactly the same. So he's realizing that he is able to change things, or as he's making decisions, micro decisions in the moment, it is changing how things unfold. And he's not really sure yet what the impact is, or what the full ramifications of that currently is. And Jessica, she's like, all right, Paul is well trained. He's been trained since birth. He's been trained by the greatest swordsmen and fighters in the Imperium, Duncan Idaho, Gurney Halleck. But she's like, but he's been trained with a shield, and the Fremen don't use shields. And Jamis obviously has been fighting for a long time, and all this time without a shield. So he has none of those habits that you have, because you have to strike slowly. You have to penetrate the shield with slow action. So she's like, does Paul realize this? And but Paul does. So we're switching back and forth through the POV of Jessica and Paul, and it's really deftly done by Frank Herbert, because the tension builds up. And so Jamis comes in, he strikes a few times, but Paul gets away. But his counterattack is always too slow, just too slow, just too slow, over and over again. And it's because he's just so well trained, it's hard to break that habit. But he gets in a good cut. He cuts Jamis's hand, and then he says, do you yield? And everybody in the cave is like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And Jamis is like, what are you talking about? And Stilgar's like, everyone stop. He doesn't know our ways. He doesn't realize that this is a fight to the death. And Stilgar is making comments to Jessica and then saying, don't answer, you're not allowed to talk, which is kind of funny. But Jessica knows he's never killed anyone before, and this is a big deal. And how's he going to work it through? And all this time, Stilgar has assumed that Paul has been toying with them. And he's like, stop playing around with them, get to it. And so they continue the battle, and it's getting more and more tense, and the fear that Jessica implanted in Jamis is starting to bubble to the surface. And Paul remembers something that Duncan Idaho told him, which is about when the fear strikes, let it really take root, because it will build into terror. And while a terrified person is unpredictable, they're also more prone to making a mistake. And you've been trained to look for those mistakes and to capitalize on them. And Gurney, same sort of lessons that Paul is remembering, that even if you just have to stab somebody, it's not very artful, but, go for it. And Paul does. He sees an opportunity. He sees Jamis set up a feint, the very thing that Chani described to him, and he takes advantage of it and stabs Jamis, and Jamis is dead. And the rest of the Fremen, they kind of swoop in to wrap up his body and take it away, because they don't want to lose any more moisture from it, although they don't really get into it. But as we'll see, that's why they have collected him. And Jessica realizes that this is a really important moment in Paul's life, and she wants to make sure that he takes away the right lesson. She doesn't want him to become bloodthirsty. She doesn't want him to relish this. So she uses her Bene Gesserit powers and just the right tone of voice. And she says, well, how does it feel, killer? And Paul is kind of almost like it's a slap. And but he realizes what she's doing. And Stilgar as well, he's like, you try to, when you come to call me out one of these days, don't try to toy with me like you did with Jamis, because I'm not going to play that. But then Paul explains, he's like, I wasn't playing with him. I just, honestly, I did not want to kill him. And Stilgar, he respects that. He understands that that's the case. And he says, look, this is an important moment in Fremen culture as well. And it's time, the others are like, it's time that Paul got a Fremen name. And so Stilgar realizes that Paul has a really solid strength to him. So he uses a Fremen word that means the strength at the base of a pillar, and that name is Usul. And so he says that, Paul, your secret name in this part of the tribe is going to be Usul, and we'll call you Usul when we're in private. But once you're around or among the Fremen at large, you need another name, your name of manhood, which you get to pick, and that's what we'll call you openly. And so Paul asks them what the name of the little jumping mouse is, and it's something that he's seen before, and he respected this desert creature. At the same time, he kind of knows what they're going to say, and so they explain that mouse is called Muad'Dib, and Jessica realizes that was the name that Paul told her that the Fremen were going to call him. But Paul says, I don't want to throw away my Atreides heritage, so can I be known as Paul Muad'Dib? And Stilgar is like, you will be known as Paul Muad'Dib. And and Paul realizes this was not part of his memory, and so he's already changing things, and so he's filing that away as well. And Stilgar says, that's a pretty auspicious name because we revere Muad'Dib. This is a smart desert creature. It makes its own water. It hides during the day. It comes out at night. We use it as a tool for teaching young boys how to, behave and live in the Fremen world. And so it's kind of it's neat for Stilgar, and the others agree as well. They think it's a good fit for Paul, and it's kind of feeding again into this whole idea of the legend of the Lisan al-Gaib, and everything is kind of clicking into place. But for a while, Jessica was worried that they're leveraging the whole religious aspect, and the legends was already coming to haunt them with Jamas's action, but they managed to get through it. So a really important chapter, and it ends with Paul realizing that if he can change things, then maybe these visions that he's having of the Fremen going on a jihad in his name and just killing epic numbers of people, he's like, that can't be allowed to happen. I have to stop that. And it's sort of starting to give him the kernel of hope that he may be able to prevent that from happening. So it's a great chapter. The tension is great. It's a great knife fight. I have it bookmarked especially because I like to read those scenes over and over again. This is a scene, as great as this scene is it wasn't adapted. It was adapted in the Lynch movie, but it was cut. They didn't feel like it was necessary. They found other ways to try to feed into that. They still had the naming part, but it was as a result of Paul's disarming Jamas and that whole scene where they accept Paul and Jessica into the tribe. It's done in much more detail in the miniseries. And then, of course, it's one of the last scenes in part 1 of the Villeneuve adaptation. But it's combined with the scene where where he is disarmed. So it's one follows right on the other in terms of the knife fight with Jamas. But the naming part has not happened. So I'm hoping that that's part of the part 2. It'll make more sense, although they might just skip ahead. Who knows? We'll find out. Find out in March when we get to see part 2. But the one thing that the Villeneuve movie, I think, does a really good job is this idea of the thought nexus, where Paul sees that there are multiple paths. So throughout that first movie, he got several snatches of possible futures. Some of them where Jamas was his mentor, and some of them where Jamas kills him. And he sees his death on a couple of different occasions. And sometimes it's Chani that's killing him. So it's a little all over the place, but didn't have a lot of visions of getting through the fight victoriously, although that is ultimately what does happen. So it's a great chapter. Let me know what your thoughts are on this chapter if you're reading along, or if you just happen to remember it from the time that you read it. If you have any questions, fire away. And any other comments or thoughts as we read through Dune. That's it for this one. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon.